Hi, everybody. It's Mrs. Strebler again. Here we go. You should take your worksheet out today because I'm going to walk through some of these with you and make sure you know how to do this. So today we are factoring out the greatest common factor. Factors are what times what gives you a number. So for example, factors of 10 are 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. Okay, so if I said list the factors of 10, it would give you 1, 2, 5, and 10. Factors are never going to be bigger than that number itself. You would never have 20 because 20 is bigger than 10. And the other thing I want you to remember is x to the squared, x squared means I have two x's we're multiplying together. X to the fifth means I'm taking 5 x's and multiplying together. Okay, so I want you to remember that. Have your calculator out to help you. So here we go. You need to think, what's the biggest number that can be divided out? So here's number 1. So I look. Now, do you see my numbers are 3 and 15? So what can be divided out of 3 and 15? Do you see 3 goes into 3 and 3 goes into 15? Because the factors of 3 are 1 times 3, but the factors of 15 are 1 times 15 and 3 times 5. The biggest number they have in common is 3. That's how I know that. Okay, now since there are not variables in both, that's all we're going to do. Then you're going to write a little arrow here, and the number in red gets factored out. Think of it as reverse distribution. Okay, so those simplify out to just 1x squared or just x squared, and then I still have the plus there, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. So my answer is 3, and then x squared plus 5. And if I were to distribute it back in, I would get my original problem. Okay? Okay. Now, what can be divided out of number 2? Well, there aren't any numbers we can really divide out except 1, and 1 doesn't do anything to it. But do you see there's x's in both of these? So I want you, if there's just an x, it means x to the first power. You might want to put that little 1 there. And what you're going to look for is the smallest exponent and put those down here. That's in all the terms. Okay? You have an exponent of 2 and you have an exponent of 1. The smaller exponent goes there. Okay? Now, draw your arrow. Now here, really what this means, I'm just going to write it below it. X squared is x times x, and the bottom is x, or x to the first. And this is 6x over x. So that's what that really means, and that's what that really means. So now, when I divide an x out, because the number in red gets pulled out to the front, do you see one set of x's cancel? So I'm only left with this and the plus sign, and these x's cancel, so all I'm left with is 6. Okay, and I could double check if I redistribute that in. Do you see? That's kind of what you need to think. Okay, now here, what can I divide out of each one? Now there's not variables in both, so I'm thinking the numbers. So you should always think, can 8 go into 8 and 8 go into 16? Yes. Okay, so that 8 gets pulled out or factored out, and what is left? This becomes a 1. The minus sign is still there. This becomes 2x to the 5th. Okay. Look at number 4. Now, again, I see an X here, so I'm going to put a 1 there. Now, between 2 and 10, I can divide out a 2. And then I'm going to divide out the smallest exponent. Okay, now again, you can think of this as 2 and then 4 X's. And the bottom is a 2 and only has 1 X. And this one is 10 and 1 X and 2 and 1 X. That exponent tells you how many of them you have. Okay, so now in red, I divide out a 2X. And now I think the 2's cancel and one of the X's cancel. So I have 3 X's left. Now the 10 over 2 becomes a 5 and the X's cancel as well. So that's all I have. Okay, think about that. Okay, let's look here. So I'm just going to put this one on the side for right now. Now, do you see there's a 7 in both? So I know 7 goes into both of them. Now the smallest exponent is 5. 5 is smaller than 9. So I'm going to put an X to the 5th. So what does that mean? Here I have a 7 and then 9 X's. Okay, and I have a 7 and 5 X's. And then that minus, and I have a 7 and 5. Now, here's one thing I want you to realize. Do you see? That means I have 5 X's and 5 X's. There's exactly the same amount on the top. I want you to realize that. Okay, so we're going to divide out a 7X to the 5th. Okay, now in parentheses, the 7's cancel here and they cancel here. Now, X on the top. So do you see I have 4 of these left? And if I have the same exact thing on the top, X to the 5th and X to the 5th, I would be canceling them all out. So when everything cancels and it's exactly the same on the top and the bottom, that reduces to 1. So hopefully you can think about that. Okay, let's look at number 6. Now, what's the biggest number that can be divided out of 9 and 12? 9 doesn't go into 12, so that doesn't help. But do you see a 3 can be divided out of both? And the smallest exponent is 3. Okay, now that's the number I'm putting out front or factoring out. Okay, now do you see the 12 over the 3 becomes a 4, and the X to the 3rd and the X to the 3rd cancel out entirely because it's the same exact on the top and the bottom. Oops, and this should have been a 3. I oopsed this, sorry about that. Because that's the smaller one. See, you can get confused too. Now, do you see that this 9 and 3 here become reduced to 3? And now again, think about that. We have 5 X's on the top and 3 on the bottom. And when they cancel out one at a time, I have 2 of them left. You should be noticing now 5 minus 3 is 2. 9 up here, 9 minus 5 is 4. That's what I want you to kind of see. So this is your answer. I know it's a little weird. Okay, here we go. So look at all the numbers, 6, 12, and 18. Okay, what goes into 6? Does 6 go into 12? Yes. Does 6 go into 18? Yes. So you're thinking, can I make the smaller number go into all of them? And now take the smallest X. This term doesn't have any X's, so we cannot divide out any X's. It would need to be in all the terms. Okay, so all I can divide out of here, I can't divide X's out of all 3 of them, so I can't divide them out at all. Okay, so when I divide out, those cancel. So my first term in the parentheses is x to the third, then a minus sign. This becomes 2x squared. And my final thing right here is plus 3. So I have factored out a 6, and what's left inside is that, but I factored out the 6. Okay, number 8. Now, there's not a 3 or big numbers in front in both terms. There's not x's in both terms, but do you see there's a y to the first and a y to the first in both terms? So that's what I'm going to factor out, is just that y, or y to the first. And then if you have the exact same thing on the top of the fraction and the bottom, they cancel, and I'm canceling and left with an x to the fifth. And I have the exact same thing here, and I'm left with 3. That one was actually really nice. So I factored out a y that time. Okay, last few. Okay, so do you see I have a 2 in both terms, big front. So I can take out a 2. I don't have an x in both terms. I do have a y to the first and a y to the second. The smaller exponent is 1. Okay, so in red, I divide out a 2y to the first. You can also just say that's 2y. Okay, does that make sense? I'm hoping. Okay, so these two cancel, right? And these y's are the same, cancel. So you're just left with x to the 7th. These two cancel out to 1. Now this part, what's left on that second term is y times y over y. So what is left? Well, cancel, cancel. So all that's left is 1y. Okay, last problem. Now, what's the biggest number that can be divided out of 20 and 30? Well, the biggest number is 10. Now, on the first term here, I have x's. On the second term here, I have y's. I can only divide out x's if there would be x's in both terms, or y's if there were y's in both terms, because I have to take the same thing out of each term. I have to be able to factor out the same number. So since there's nothing to factor out for in terms of variables, the biggest thing I can just factor out is the 10. So the first term, 20 over 10, becomes 2. I still have x to the 9th, plus the biggest thing divided out becomes now a 3, and that's y to the 2nd. So again, because I don't have x's and y's, like in number 9, I had y's in both terms, I don't have x's and y's or either or in both terms, so I can't take out any variables at all. Okay, so that takes care of the worksheet. So just double check you got your answers correct and do today's formative in Schoology, okay? Have a great day.